By James Creedon, our press reviewer. Hello, James.
Good morning, Lorna.
Right, so we're going to start off with the International Herald Tribune.
Yes, and I'm starting with it because it's actually not representative of what's on the international front pages today. It's mainly Ivory Coast, but they decided to put the burqa ban in France and that particular protest on the front page of the paper this morning, with just a little column on the right on Ivory Coast, strongman surrenders to rival in Ivory Coast. So I think that was an interesting choice. And perhaps the Times who chose to put Kate Middleton on the front page. But let's just say they're not representative of what the front pages are this morning. Let's have a look first of all at Slate Africa, Slate Afrique. Laurent Gbagbo, check and mate is their front page headline. Now, a lot of the focus in coverage of Ivory Coast has been the humiliating nature of the arrest of Laurent Gbagbo. On a symbolic level, this reminds us of the end of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They say while Gbagbo's teeth and hair weren't inspected, like Saddam's, the images amounted to the same level of humiliation. They say it was highly symbolic to see him in a simple vest, looking like the ordinary civilian that he'd once again become. And as for his infamous wife, Simone, she was seen in a nightdress, no longer appearing like a falcon, they say, pointing out this article was written in French, so it might not have been written that way in English, but more like a bird fallen from her nest. Now, The Independent is also focusing on that loss of dignity and humiliation, stripped of dignity, stripped of power, is their front page headline, with that photo of Gbagbo in a vest at the Gulf Hotel. They say whether or not a French boot entered the grounds of the presidential palace. This is the analysis of John Litchfield, the Paris correspondent. Whether or not a French boot entered the grounds of the presidential palace, it is clear that the French military were instrumental in finally swaying the Battle of Abidjan.
As indeed the French papers were keen, or some of them were keen to point out.
Absolutely, even Libération this morning said French. It basically headlined on a French victory in many senses. So, despite the fact that the head of French troops in Abidjan said that not one French boot was in the presidential compound, an awful lot of the analysis seems to be that they at least paved the way for his arrest, if not. Perhaps the involvement was even greater still. Something that could, of course, potentially prove problematic for Mr. Ouattara. Absolutely. As he takes power. And indeed, The Guardian is talking about French help and a slap. With his French help and a slap, Gbagbo is prized from his bunker. There was no suicide pill, they say, no act of martyrdom. Instead, it is claimed there was a humiliating slap on the cheek, and Laurent Gbagbo was hauled from his bunker. Now, they say also in The Guardian that this could win votes for Sarkozy, he was treading a fine line between being damned for intervening and being accused of neocolonialism, and damned for sitting on the fence.
Now, what about the Ivorian media themselves?
Well, it was interesting this morning, actually. The pro-Gbagbo media, one of the newspapers, Fraternité Matin, its website was down this morning. Another one, Notre Voix, had no article online since the 30th of March. So we did look for some pro-Gbagbo voices without finding them. If we look at the neighbouring country of Burkina Faso, which traditionally supports Ouattara because it shares a border with the north of Ivory Coast, and the north of the country is more tribally similar to Burkina Faso. L'Observateur Palga says, whether or not it was the French who arrested Gbagbo, it doesn't really matter. What's important is that he was arrested. And they do say, you can't help but be saddened by the pictures of Gbagbo at the very end, when he could have left as a statesman with full honours. So they say if there's one thing to be pleased about, it is that he was taken alive despite his suicidal stubbornness.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, James, for that whiz through the international newspapers this Tuesday. Still to come here on Live from Paris, gunning for the Gunners. Another English football club falls into foreign ownership, but find out why the noises this time are mostly positive. That's coming up in Business after the break with Owen Fairclough. Do stay tuned.